Thank you all for inviting me here today. It's a privilege to be among you, the faithful of Ireland, standing up for our Constitution, which was granted by God. The power of our Constitution comes from God. God is the head of state here, and our Constitution comes from Him, and it is our duty to protect it at all costs. Our comfort and our well-being are secondary to the Constitution, because the Constitution protects all of us. It is the document that makes us all equal. We are all equal in the face of God and our Constitution. They have made laws that they use to show preference. They use their laws to persecute people like you and me, whereas they refuse to use the laws when it comes to these people in here. So you never see a TD up for any kind of law breaking. You never see them in court for any kind of law breaking. You never see them get a fine. You never see them get a jail sentence. It's amazing, you know. In England last year, there were 14,000 police officers prosecuted for corruption. 14,000. So it's peculiar to me that in the first 85 years of the Irish police force, there were 2 Gardaí prosecuted in their whole 85 years for corruption. Now, the numbers have changed a little bit in the last few years, but not very much. Not very much at all. And something changed about 30 years ago with the recruitment for the Gardaí. We all remember, or many of us will remember, the Gardaí years ago, and he was a pillar of the community, and he was a man who came to Mass on Sunday, and he came to people's communions and confirmations and weddings, and he was part of the community, and he was a highly respected man. And just an evil look from this man would put the fear of God in anyone, you know. We all remember this Garda that we had huge respect for, and that was shared our life events at the same time. When they stopped recruiting that guy 30 years ago, they don't recruit him anymore. They don't want that man in their force. He's no use in a multicultural society. He's no use going forward. That man who would be as loyal to our Constitution as the citizen is no use to those of us, those people who wish to change our country into this, whatever they have planned. It's hard to imagine. So they started to recruit a different type of Garda. The go-getter is one type of Garda. The careerist Garda. The ruthless Garda. But actually, if you look at police forces around the world, one of the most recruited individual to police forces, especially in the capitals, in the capital cities around the world, are actually those who score lowest on the intelligence tests. And that is because they don't want people too close to them that are too smart, that will figure them out. They want people who will just obey orders without question. They want people who don't have the smarts to equate what they're doing in their day-to-day life with our Constitution. And that is the people that they have been recruiting into our police force for many, many years now. Not all of them, of course. There are many good Gardaí. We all know a few, and you know it's been going on for so long now, though, that unfortunately they have found avenues that they can persecute us with very easily. So there was a Public Order Act established in this country, and back in the 90s, in the mid-90s. And the threshold of evidence required to prove a public order charge, in most cases, is the testimony of the arresting Garda. So what that means, unfortunately, is that if a Garda arrests you for a public order charge, unless you have a witness or camera evidence, you will be convicted. So it's almost impossible not to be convicted of a public order charge. And I would actually like to know how many charges the Gardaí have brought against people, public order charges against people over the last 25 years, and how many have not been convicted of those charges. because it seems to me that it's just a cash cow for lawyers on free legal aid. Why are we paying lawyers millions and millions of euros every year to defend people from public order charges when they fail to do so 99.99999% of the time? The lawyers that we are paying millions of euros to never actually get anyone off on a public order charge. It never happens. It just doesn't happen. It's almost impossible. So many of you will be aware recently that I was brought up on a public order charge. Now, I wasn't arrested on a public order charge. I was just dragged off the street. And same with my partner, Katie. She was also dragged off the street. We were given several reasons for our arrest. We were told we would be arrested because we weren't wearing masks. We were outside. There's no requirement to wear masks outside. There's no guideline to wear masks outside. There's no regulation to wear masks outside. None of those things are but they did drag us off the street, according to that's what they were there for. They also told us that they were going to arrest us because we were handing out leaflets. There is no requirement. There is no. It's not illegal to hand out leaflets. It's actually a requirement under the Constitution to educate public opinion. Each of us has a duty, if we support our Constitution, to contribute to educating public opinion. So, it was one fake reason to arrest us after another that day. But it was enough to arrest us, because they knew that their testimony, combined with a charge that has no standard of evidence, would be enough to justify the arrest, would be enough to get us off the street, would be enough to drag us into the back of a Garda car, would be enough to put us in a cell for 24 hours in the freezing cold.
Shame on them! Shame on them! Shame on them! Shame on them! Shame on them!
They do it to a lot of people. They do it to a lot of people in Ireland all the time. It's been going on for decades, in fact. So what happens is that a Garda approaches someone for some reason, I don't know, any reason. A Garda approaches someone and they start making, you see, they've gotten cavalier over the years. They think they can say anything they like to you. They think they can behave any way they want. And that's partly our fault, because we don't stand up to them. Because we don't demand the respect that a Garda is supposed to show you. So when a Garda approaches you, he has to have a reason to approach you. He needs to be investigating a crime, he needs to suspect you of a crime, he needs to have something he's worried about. A Garda cannot approach you just to seek information about you. It doesn't matter what that information is. So unless you've committed a crime, a Garda shouldn't be speaking to you at all. No. He shouldn't come near you. So if a Garda does approach you, first things first, actually, always make sure you have space on your phone to take a video. There's no point in even trying to stand up to a Garda unless you've got space on the phone to record the incident. A witness is not as good as a camera in court. Now, if it's one Garda, then maybe a witness will have some weight. But if there are two Gardaí, it doesn't matter how many witnesses you have, you will not beat the testimony of the Garda in a public order situation in the district court. So I would like to point out something about the district court. If you say it slowly, it says, "this trick." Yeah? It's a trick. The district court is a trick. You have to agree to be judged by the district court. Yeah? So you need to be aware of this, and that you are not subject to these acts of law. You are subject to laws related to personal harm to people, theft, fraud, those kinds of things. But acts of law are just that. They are acts. And if you notice the phraseology, acts and tricks, it should be a warning to you, So I would say that if you are approached by a Garda and he starts to ask questions, you don't have to answer those questions. You always have the right to silence. Even if you're not under charge, a Garda doesn't have to give you the right of silence. You have the rights of silence. So the thing we're fighting in this country is these people in here, those people there, those people over there with the cameras, those three, that trifecta, they make the Romesh laws. Those people over there produce the sound that makes those laws seem reasonable. They keep reinforcing that in people's minds. And those people there, they make sure you abide by the laws. No, turn it around. I'll get there again. So I'd like to encourage Irish people in general and everybody at home that you need to stand up to those people who are enforcing the laws, our regulations, our guidelines. That's where self-respect starts. That you're not walking down the street in fear that a guard might come at you and demand your identity or put you in the newspaper or bring you to court. So that's the first place we have to start. Now there's plenty of people working on the media, and there's plenty of people working on these guys in here. But we as citizens, we need to stand up to the Gardaí, and we need to tell them that we're not taking their crap anymore. You know you're wrong. We know you're wrong. And it has to stop. These laws are contradictory to our Constitution. It's clear as day. That is your oath. Your oath is to that Constitution.
Yes.
So when the Garda, when the Dáil wants to remove one of your rights, like it removed the right to life of the unborn child recently, they had to go through a process called a referendum. And that process of referendum allowed them to make a modification to the Constitution and remove the right to life of the unborn children. And then they started to make laws. Then they started to make laws regarding abortion and killing children. But not until they had that referendum and removed that right of the unborn child from the Constitution could they make those laws. So the laws that these people have made in here are directly contradictory to the rights we have in our Constitution. And we never removed those rights from the Constitution. Those rights are still there. We never had the referendum to remove any of those rights. So these laws are completely illegal. And therefore, the people that made them are the criminals. They're the ones that need to be arrested. All of them, all of the Oireachtas. Not just the ones that were in Clifton breaking those illegal laws, but the ones that made the illegal laws. They're the people that need to be arrested, Garda. That's what your oath says. Your oath says to arrest those people and protect our Constitution. That's what has to happen. Not these God-fearing people here. Those people, those Satanist, evil people in there that murder children. They're the people that need to be arrested. So, look at guys, I don't expect everybody to be able to stand up to the police and to do 24 hours in a jail cell and to go through the process in the district court. It's quite challenging, you know. But I will say that there are more people, and the men of Ireland especially, need to stand up. Where are the men of Ireland?
Exactly.
Why are they hiding and letting their women out here protect them? You know? Come out, the men of Ireland. It's time. Come out before you have nothing left at all.
Come out, you cowards. Come out, you cowards.
Somebody asked me to say something about masks, and I actually had a conversation with somebody in Waterford yesterday about masks. And just to see the fear on the person's face, he claimed to be a microbiologist, and he was wearing a cloth mask. And I asked him how the incubation period was for a bacteria. How long does it take the average bacteria to reproduce? He didn't seem to know. So every 20 minutes, yes, that's precisely, we know that. So within an hour or 2 hours, they're producing logarithmically. So that means they're producing double every time. And after a short period of time, you're breathing in concentrated bacteria. And it's not just the bacteria you breathe in, it's the bacteria in your environment. So when you walk along through the road, if someone has bacteria and they put it onto your mask, that will incubate also, you know. So unless you're professionally trained and you're wearing a proper kind of a mask, an N95 mask, these masks are deadly dangerous. Deadly dangerous. Not just for healthy people, but for young people. We've got these bacteria mats everywhere now, you know, and people are touching them all the time, and touching the handles on the bus, and touching things that you see all around you all the time, you know. So the masks are just, I can't think that it's anything other than on purpose, you know, that they've done this to people. I can't think why they would want to force people to wear a mask while reducing their immune system. Another point I made yesterday is that if you look at all these COVID signs you see around the place, and all the ads on the radio, you never see take vitamins, take a good multivitamin. It's not written on any of the ads. It's not on one poster. It's not written that we should be eating fresh vegetables. In fact, if you look at all of these posters, every single one of the suggestions on the poster is a restriction of your civil liberties. That's all they've come up with, is we must restrict civil liberties, is somehow effective against a virus. How is this, you know? It's treason, is what that is. Oh yeah. So we went to Leinster the other day to speak to the bishop, but he wasn't available. And we did get to speak to a priest, and it was a deeply disturbing experience for all of us to see a man of the cloth feel so powerless and be twisted by the government and man's law, and he had no real appreciation for God's law at all, and the superiority over man's law. And this is a priest. And there was a very heroic priest in Cavan recently who had stood up and said mass for his community, and we were so proud of that guy. You know, fair play to him. He was immediately set upon by the usual crowd, and his own clergy actually turned on him also. So we went there to speak to the bishop. And we didn't get access, but we did get to speak to the priest. And you know, it was like, you know, it was RTE. That's all we were getting from the priest. There was no, so basically he and the bishop presumably have decided to close all of our churches and remove our right to receive communion based on RTE. That's fake news, RTE. They're afraid of me, terrified of the media. And we know this already, that in the beginning of all this, the TD said the same thing. Where are they getting their advice from? And one of the statements they made was Google, RTE, and Facebook. This is what our TDs locked our country down because of. So we have these people who call themselves our elites, who are using Google, Facebook, and RTE to destroy us. And we're letting them. It has to stop. We have to stop it. We have to come out in force, disobey these people, disobey the regulations. You know, our patriots, they didn't just decide to disobey the British on Easter Sunday in 1916. Those people lived lives of defiance. They were defiant every day of their lives. They took risks every day of their lives, and far greater risks than we are faced with. We are not faced with running through hedges and ditches with no food and no clothing. We don't have to put up with that stuff, and yet we're not out here defending our Constitution. Why is there not thousands of people here today to push back on this communism? This absolute, like, that now the Chinese are going to be testing people in Galway for their virus. This is the latest I heard today, you know. So I'd like to say something about communism, actually, if I might. And I'll finish then. You're all well tired after today, I can imagine. Fair play to you. But communism, so it's something I've studied enough to know that it's not something you should be studying. It's we hear all the time that well, if only we had the right leaders in communism would be a great thing. But the problem with communism is that it doesn't take account of human nature. It doesn't take account of when a man sees his child sick, he feels the need to get the money to to heal the child. He doesn't take account of the family unit and the strength of the family unit and our love for our family and our community. And then when something goes wrong, we become determined to fix it, and we will engage in some kind of commerce or free enterprise in order to make the money to fix it. So it doesn't take account of this. So if communism realizes, communists know that they don't take account of human nature. How do they worry, how can't they see why they get bad leaders? If you don't take account of the nature of your leader, then you get bad leaders all the time. It's pretty straightforward, you know. So the other thing about communism, the way that they've gone on for years, you hear, well, that's not real communism. You know, when Pol Pot killed millions, that wasn't real communism. When Stalin starved the kulaks, that wasn't real communism, you know. So it's never real communism. When the Chinese Communist Party sent this virus around the world on planes, that wasn't real communism, you know. So communism has been tried 30 or 40 times around the world, and every single time it's been tried, it resulted in genocide of the local population or the neighbouring populations. That's every single time it's been tried. So I would posit that that is the real communism, and not the communism that modern communists imagine in their brains. The one that the modern communists are imagining in their brains, that's not real communism, because it only exists in their brains. The real communism is the one that shows its face right throughout human history in genocide after genocide. That is the real communism. The other one is the imaginary communism. It doesn't exist anywhere, it never has, and it never will. That's imaginary communism. Okay, so that's me for today, guys. Thank you.